This lesson we're going to be going over reading and writing files. So I'm going to split this into two parts. The first part is going to be about reading text files and writing text files, and the second is going to be about CSV files, or also known as comma separated value files. So text files, they're simple, just text.txt extensions, and they consist of basically you can think about them as being strings that are separated by a new line character known as this. So the way they actually read a file is that you have to use this. This is a nicer, cleaner way of opening files. There are multiple ways of opening files. I like this because when you say with open, it basically will check if the file exists, and if it doesn't exist, it won't go through this code. It's just a nice way to have like that extra error checking mechanism built in. So basically you say with open, and then you pass in your text file name. So make sure that if you're going to pass in the pure name, a lot of coders make this mistake. They won't, like, if you're going to pass in the pure name without any like extensions or any a full path, you have to make sure that your text file is in the same directory as your Python file that you're executing, right? Your Python code file. If not, then you actually have to specify the path to that file, or else you'll get an error that says like this. You might not pass into this code if it doesn't find the file, if you like didn't put in the path. And then you can as file basically means that we're assigning this variable called file to the text file. Okay. Then we have to actually call the read method, and that will basically, if we say file.read, that will read the file, and we assign data to the file.read. So anything that's read by the file, so any strings or anything like that in the file will be assigned to data. And then if we actually print this, we print the file. This was originally in our sample file, in our sample text.txt file. Always make sure, a lot of people forget to do this, you have to close your file after you open it. Why? Because if you don't close it, the computer will just keep it open, and then you can keep on reading files, and if you don't close them after you read them or whatever, you'll just have a big memory problem because your computer has multiple things open all at once, and that leads to poor performance and also memory errors. So you just always want to, rule of thumb, close your file after you open it or after you're done like reading whatever you want from it, right? Yeah, that's important. File.close. Right. How about if we want to read individual lines, right? So we can do that by, instead of saying file.read, we can just say file.readLine. What that does, so this readLine function, what it does is it like will start off, the first time you call it, it's going to start at the first line, and it's just going to like read that. And then the next time you call it, it iterates to the next line, right? So the more times you call it, like one after the other, it's just going to continuously go to the next line and then read that line. So if you pick a for loop, for example, and you call file.readLine, like every time it'll just iterate to the next line. Yeah, and this is because you can think about a text file as just being like here, like this. If this were a text file, right, you can think about it as being like an array of individual lines, and then what separates and what determines what's going to be the next element in our string array or a string list is going to be this new line character. It's invisible, but the new line character just tells you, okay, skipped, make a new line, right? So that's kind of like what splits our text file, into like, so it's more like a list of strings. Right. How about if we want to actually, yeah, speaking of lists, right? How about if you want to actually like read the lines and then put that into a list, right? So here what we can do is we can declare an empty list, and then again using this code over here saying with open as file, right? Then you can iterate, like I was saying, iterate for every line, just every x. So for x in file basically means like for every line in the file, we're going to add x to our list, right? And if we actually print the list, then we actually see this new line character over here. Right, so this kind of just makes it such that you can write you can read each line as and then read it into a list, and then each line will be like an element of our list, right? And you see they're comma separated, right? That means that, and brackets indicate that it's a list. Yeah, cool. Yeah, you can see the very end. Awesome. All right. So how about writing, right? So writing to text files is very similar, but we have to, there are actually two ways of writing to text files or any file. The first is you can have the with open statement, but instead of just having it with only one parameter, we're going to pass it another, and we're going to call that A in quotations. A basically means, it stands for append, and when we append, we basically add to the end of the file. So if I say this, if I pass in A, right, and I just say file.write, I'm adding another line, blah, 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 right? That basically means that I am appending to my file. So I'm going to add to the end of it, right? And then again here, this new line character is invisible, right? If we actually look at it here, you don't see the /n. It's because like that just specifies, oh look, this is another line, right? So that basically tells us, oh, we're going to write to a new line. And then the way we read that is like, if you want to be very specific, you can just say with open sample text, and instead of A, we're going to pass in R. R stands for read, and again, we just say print file.read. This is a simple way of like printing the file, and then file.close, and then here you see the output, right? Cool. So we can also, there's another way of writing to files, and that's overwriting the contents of a file. So let's say I have a file, like the file originally had this, right? But I want to erase everything there and just start over. So what we can do is you can just put in this parameter, the W parameter, and then you can basically, here I'm like writing with this W parameter, and I'm saying, oh, I'm erasing old content. Oh, look, I can add a new line, file.close. And then again, we can read it, so, same syntax for reading. And then you see that we basically erased everything that was here originally, and then just got this new content that was printed. And then what you can do is you can also create new text files, and the way that you can do that is that you can again utilize the write parameter. So what you can do is like if the name of the file doesn't exist, right, you can create the new file. If it doesn't exist, or sorry, if it does exist, what will happen is like you're basically going to be doing over here, you're going to be overwriting the contents of that existing sample.txt file. However, if let's say our new file is a file that doesn't exist yet in my directory, so like I can create that and then write to it, close it, and then if I print the contents, oh, it says, oh look, I created a new file, right? Basically here, X basically means that we're always going to be creating a new file. X will give you an error if that file name already exists, right? So like if instead of like another new file, right, I had passed in this sample.txt file, which we already know exists, right, it'll throw an error because, or it actually won't do anything here because we catch the error, but like if you had written it a different way, you won't be able to write and create a new file because in this case, if we pass in sample.txt, that file already exists, and so we wouldn't be doing anything. Yeah, so that's it for text files. Next lesson, we'll be going over .csv files, or comma-separated value files. Yeah, thank you so much.